We're running a bit late, so I'll try and be as brief as possible. Madam, the President's wife, Mrs. Michal Herzog, that I've had the privilege of knowing her. I won't mention how many years. I'm now closer to the time in which I'm going to ask Yonatan. I have a contract with him to eulogize me. Joe Lowe, and of course Professor Boaz Gano, all of our dear friends, Mr. Miki Federman, Jeremy Sisharov, our entire family, but I'll move on straight to the matter at hand. I would simply like to share with you the main message of this conference. But before I start doing that, I'd like to apologize on behalf of Professor Uriel Reichman, who is sick with COVID for the third time now. It even caught up with him. I'm sure he will recover soon, but that's why he is not here to open this conference as he usually does with the important conference, just like the ICT conference, our conference, and other conferences. So I'd like to get to the point. And my message, which I formulated for decades, but now it's even more clear. We are at a junction in which our military might must join forces with the intelligence of diplomacy. Some people don't understand how strong the IDF is, and it has achieved some exceptional tactical achievements. But when that is, when you do not add to that some strategy, some political diplomatic strategy, you get results like the ones we have. And there's one message I'd like to convey to the political echelon, and hopefully they'll agree. Today is a historic date. There are interim conclusions, and there are a lot of warning signs in the Gaza Strip, Hamastan, and there's a lot to analyze here with respect to the intelligence and the military, but I'm going to skip over that. There are a lot of tactical achievements made by the army, and the outcome is that this can lead to some kind of diplomatic action. What does that mean? We must not be dragged into direct military occupation of Gaza. Gaza is a disaster zone. I was responsible for Gaza on behalf of the IDF twice in my life as the COGAT, the coordinator of government affairs in the territories. And I have to say that if we get dragged into direct occupation, or according to some people's deranged illusions, to establish Jewish communities or settlements there, that means we will be responsible for 2.2 million people, and that means it will be our burden, our budgetary burden, our moral burden, and we won't be able to manage that. It's only the IDF that can manage that, but the outcome will be miserable and will destroy our relations with the world, with the US and the free world. It's true that Israel and China together are 1.4 billion people, or Israel and India, then we're 2.8 billion people, but I cannot divulge the internal division or breakdown within that because that's a secret. But if we don't grasp the opportunity that's being handed to us by the US and establish a strategic axis with Saudi Arabia at its center, a country that was responsible for the Wahhabiyya, the most radical stream of Islam, even worse than Shiite Iran in certain respects, and if we don't join forces with the Emirates in Saudi Arabia, in Jordan, which is a strategic home front for Israel, and the security relations between us are a strategic asset for Israel, and Egypt, that the late Prime Minister Menachem Begin and the late President of Egypt, Anwar Sadat, they signed a very brave historic contract. And today I can tell you that it's a main pillar of Israel's national security. If such a thing should occur, and it's not just a fantasy somebody dreamed of a new Middle East, we will benefit from strategic strength, military strength, a very strong bond with the US and with Arab countries. All that already exists today. The security relations, without getting into details, are outstanding, but there's a question mark hovering over all of them because of the situation we might find ourselves get messed up in Gaza. Number two, if the hostages do not return alive to Israel, it will be a stain on Israel for eternity. This is why we are devoting the opening session to the people who have been harmed by Hamas's strategy and who were brutally attacked, but it's part of an entire complex. I'm personally not convinced that the government, and specifically the Prime Minister, did everything they could in order to bring them back for various considerations I won't get into right now, but it is a basic Jewish value to bring them back. It's a human duty, and it's an important component of our national security. And every minute there that men and women are spending time there, it will be a disaster. Just like Katzetnik once defined Auschwitz, and he said every minute there is eternity. I don't care, they could pay any and every price. Some people beg to differ, but I'm telling you that it's important strategically as well. And if there is such an agreement, and based on the IDF achievements in the Gaza Strip, I think that we can develop or realize or bring into effect an arrangement in Lebanon. Will it be stable? No. Some people think that perhaps it would be best if we attack Hezbollah right now. Yeah, maybe there is a rationale there, but I have the opposite rationale. We need to rehabilitate, we need to pause, we need to use our brains, we need the help of the US, and we need to build ourselves. And now I'd like to move on to the main threat, and the way we'll address it has to do with the main thing I'm talking about, and that's the Iranian threat. Since 1996, I had the honor to submit to the Prime Minister back then in the previous century, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, the intel assessment regarding the Iranian threat. Back then, it didn't have the capabilities it has today. Today, it's a nuclear threshold country. What does that mean? If I'll quote the American Chief of General Staff, because he said this publicly, in a matter of several months, it can have nuclear weapons. Why are nuclear weapons dangerous? First of all, it's dangerous that a country with a strategy and ideology to destroy Israel will have such weapons. It mustn't happen. Some people say they'll never use it. I know of one way that they'll never use it. If they simply don't have it, it will start a nuclear arms race. And number three, we've seen it now. They will provide deterrence to all terrorist organizations, just like, you know, that fly that eats up the palm trees. They'll eat them from inside. Look at Yemen, Syria, Lebanon. All these countries have become proxies of Iran, and together, based on Qasem Soleimani's vision, whom we got rid of, but we did not get rid of his vision, they form this firewall launched at Israel. And if they have nuclear capabilities, then we will be in a very dire situation. So we need to do everything we can today in order to build our military might based on the lessons we learned in this war, and diplomatic might based on our alliance with the US and other Western countries. The IDF already belongs to CENTCOM. It's a vast organization that brings together all the chiefs of general staffs of the Arab military. And we've heard that the IDF chief of general staff met with all the Arab chiefs of general staffs, and we saw how we managed to deter Iran based on Israel's strength and based on the regional alliance that not much is said about, and also based on American strength and British and others. Israel needs to constantly bring together its diplomatic knowledge and the military might. And now I'd like to say a few words about Judea and Samaria. There is amazing activity held there by the IDF, the ISA, and the Intel Directorate to thwart the terrorist attacks. But there's a competing strategy, therefore the right strategy, which strives to annex Judea and Samaria and then to annex the Gaza Strip. And if we do that, we will find ourselves in the international courts. The wheels of these processes are already in motion. These processes, these monstrous processes, the wheels of that terrible machine have started rolling, and without an American Iron Dome and without the legitimacy of the international system, Israel will be harmed both politically and militarily and economically. All that is within the scope, within the purview of the Israeli government's decision making. Either we take the turn to the left or we take a turn to the right, and that will lead to a terrible disaster. So therefore, my message, since we are a bit short of time, my message is we are at a historic intersection between military might and diplomatic savvy, and or choosing various slogans regarding various victories that will never happen if we find ourselves in the quagmire of Gaza, or that boiling place, Judea and Samaria, filled with unrest. And even though if we will win at the end, there will be at a terrible price. But if we have the political and diplomatic savvy and the military might, we can avoid that. This is what I wanted to share with you at the short time I allotted to myself, and I recommend we can each have your own opinions. We have some very diverse sessions planned, and people will, of course, speak their minds, but ultimately, this is the main axis on the path of strategic surprises, so that we will not find ourselves facing such a terrible surprise. And I could give you an entire lecture about the Intel failure and other failures, but we need to recover. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, there's a horizon, and it's all up to us. That was the main message. I'd like to thank all of you for coming. I'd like to thank the President's wife, and I would like to wish us all an interesting conference. I would like to thank you all. Hopefully, there will be some very fruitful and important discussions that will contribute to overall thinking and perhaps even to policy. Thank you very much.